Hey guys, Steven here, Fanatic Perspective. So I want to talk some hoops today. Obviously, it's the beginning of the NBA season. Actually kicked off last night. Philadelphia losing at Boston. And Golden State obviously getting their rings, defeating the Oklahoma City Thunder minus Russell Westbrook. So a lot to talk about. Really excited as an NBA fan, as a Spurs fan. We're in a weird place. Always a crazy drama-filled offseason, but now we hit the hardwood. So I'm going to go through some predictions that I have and just how I think things will play out as we go into the latter months of May and June next year. But overall, obviously the biggest storyline, LeBron being in the Western Conference, joining the Los Angeles Lakers. How will he gel with the younger roster meshed with some veteran pieces, some guys that have won championships like a JaVale McGee and a Rajon Rondo, and other guys who he had played with before in Miami, like a Michael Beasley, other guys who he has had weird playoff random, whatever you want to call it, with, like Lance Stevenson. So very interesting bunch. I think it's going to be a year where expectations seem kind of low for a LeBron team with some talent. I mean, you still have a Brandon Ingram, Lonzo Ball, Kyle Kuzma. So there are some pieces there for LeBron to really be able to work with. One could argue there's more talent on this Lakers team than he had in Cleveland, and their roster in terms of from a schematic standpoint and just some of the players they have from a matchup perspective, it's better equipped to deal with Golden State than what he had with Cleveland. So I think, just starting off there, I've always said, one of the things that has propped up LeBron's resume is the 7 straight finals, but, playing in an inferior conference in the East. Now he's playing in the Western Conference, and I've always said, there's no way he's won a 7 straight if he plays all those games in the West. But this Lakers team is not as. I think this Lakers team is very interesting. I like what I'm seeing just in terms of the physical development of Lonzo, Kuzma, and Ingram. And, if Ingram can step up and be that second guy, honestly take on a bit of the scoring load at times, and really to see how LeBron will be utilized. Is he going to play off the ball more? Is he going to be kind of more of a slasher? Hey, let's let Rondo and Lonzo kind of run things in terms of facilitating the offense. Will LeBron have the patience to forfeit those responsibilities? One of the things LeBron talk about wanting to be more of a traditional small forward and playing more of a role within an offense, within a framework of an offense. But we have to see that actually play out, because it's a big thing for him to concede, and rightfully so. He's obviously been one of the best playmakers in NBA history. But from a energy perspective and just long term in terms of how can you defeat the Golden States and the Houston Rockets of the world, you're going to need all hands on deck. So we'll see how that plays out. I do think my first prediction is the Lakers will be at a top 3 seed. I know a lot of people have picked them to finish 5, 4, what have you. The only 2 teams I can definitively say are better than the Lakers, that includes the LeBron James, the Houston Rockets, and the Golden State Warriors. So I do think, it's going to be a toss-up between them and Houston for the 2nd seed, because I do think Houston, moving on to them, with reigning MVP James Harden, is going to take a step back. It's got, I think it's a lot to ask for Chris Paul to stay healthy all 82 games, number one. I know they have Brandon Knight and Eric Gordon is still around, and they have a lot of firepower offensively, especially with the addition of hopefully rejuvenated Carmelo Anthony. But I don't like what they lost on the defensive end. Luka Doncic, I know he was banged up and really couldn't give it a full go come playoff time. It really hurt him. Losing a Trevor Ariza, who's basically their primary on-ball defender. What are they going to look like on the wing? It looks like it's going to be PJ Tucker with Melo playing small ball 4. You have James Ennis, who we know from Memphis. So I'm not in love with their wing rotation, So unless we're going to see a big uptick offensively from, say, Clint Capella, and just he continues to make that leap. He had a great season last year. He's gotten better every year. They're going to need him to get a lot better, and they're going to need Chris Paul to stay healthy, or else they're going to take a step back from being, obviously they were one game away from not just going to the finals, but they probably beat Cleveland in the NBA Finals. So, the West right now, very, very interesting. Then you have teams like the Utah Jazz, another team on the upswing, in the Denver Nuggets, who a lot of analysts, on whether you watch ESPN, NBA TV, they seem to be the hot team with Nikola Jokic making the jump, and Jamal Murray, Gary Harris, a lot of the people they have in that backcourt who were, young, re-signing Will Barton. They have a lot of pieces, but I'm a little disappointed that they didn't make the playoffs last year, with those guys. So very curious to see, even a guy like a Paul Millsap. Sometimes you have all these pieces, and there's not a defined role for a go-to scorer, a go-to person. I'm looking for somebody on Denver, whether it's Jokic or Millsap, to step up and be that go-to guy, especially in crunch time. I do like Utah because Utah has a defined guy and a Donovan Mitchell that they can ride, but they have supplemented him with other great pieces, including Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. So I do have Utah right now a little bit ahead of the Denver Nuggets. If we go back and if we go down and look at the rest of the teams in the Western Conference, Oklahoma City is going to be very good. I know they lost last night. Obviously, Russell Westbrook's knee is a concern, but this team, that Oklahoma City team, is built perfectly for Russ, because now that you remove a Carmelo Anthony, it's really only one other primary ball handler, scorer that they have on their roster, and Paul George. The NBA, the TNT crew pointed out astutely, Steven Adams is one of the better centers in the league, and he doesn't really need the basketball. So everything that they've built around Russ is really around, they have to adopt a defensive mentality, which starts with Russ, because I do think when he puts his mind to it, he can be an elite defensive player at his position. But if they can kind of be more of a Memphis Grizzlies type of grind out system, with him and Paul George handling the scoring load, you have a Dennis Schroeder who's going to be a big help coming off the bench, as well as playing next to Russ. So I really like what Oklahoma City has put together, considering who their franchise player is. And whenever you have, Allen Iverson, for example, when he went to the finals in 2001, that team, if they were ever going to win anything, that was the way the team needed to be constructed. You saw later in his career, when he actually played with more talented people, he struggled as a point guard because that's never been his mentality. So when you can kind of put everything on Russell's plate, and you have a guy like a Paul George who is willing to defer to him, makes life a lot easier. So this is going to be their best chance. They're the one team I could see where they could sneak into the top three and maybe unseat either the Lakers or the Rockets. I know I'm giving the Lakers a lot of praise, but anytime you add LeBron James, that automatically elevates you. Obviously, I got to touch on my San Antonio Spurs. We've been, we've been snake bitten at the point guard position. DeJounte Murray, who finished second team All-NBA defense last year, losing him, I expected him to make, not comparing him to Kawhi, but that kind of leap that Kawhi made after he won Finals MVP, and they kind of started passing him the torch. I expected that from DeJounte Murray. I know the work that brother put in this summer, and it was heartbreaking to see him tear his ACL. Then you have Derek White go down for 3 months, looks like, possibly, who was our first-round pick last year, and somebody who was developing into a solid, heady player, could shoot the basketball and play multiple positions. Now he's out. So you're leaving this, and Lonnie Walker's dealing with his thing too. He's probably not going to be back for another 6 weeks. So they're really, really short ball handlers and really playmakers. If you look at, they lost Tony Parker, they lost Kyle Anderson, they lost Manu Ginobili. Man, that's a tough slate for them to deal with. Not to mention Kawhi Leonard himself. We're gonna have to really lean on DeMar DeRozan to step up his playmaking. I know he has the ability to do it. I think he averaged almost 5 assists last year when he actually took on more of the ball handling responsibilities. So him, coupled with Patty Mills and really Bryn Forbes, it's really all the Spurs got left. But I am not counting the Spurs out. I know I may be speaking strictly from my fandom. I do think that they will make the playoffs somehow, some way. With this being really the last couple years of Greg Popovich, I can't see him going out that way. I could see them making getting aggressive, which they don't typically do, but making an in-season trade to get another asset at the point guard position to help out. But somehow, some way, I do think they'll figure it out. They still have 2 All-NBA players on LaMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan, and a very good front court. Rudy Gay looks really good. So, they're added the addition of a Marco Bellinelli, former champion Spur. Somehow, some way, the Spurs are going to pull this through, especially with you see some of these younger teams that on paper have more talent or, more stability at certain positions, but either the coaching's an issue or, they have locker room issues like a Minnesota or Portland where it's like, hey, is this Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum thing a fit? So I do think the Spurs can potentially leapfrog some of those teams and still make it into the top 8 in the Western Conference. The last team I want to touch on, and here's my next prediction, the New Orleans Pelicans, who were, kind of the breakout team last year in the playoffs as they swept Portland. I think it was a 3-6. They were the 6th seed and swept Portland until they were dispatched by the Golden State Warriors. I have Anthony Davis winning MVP this year. I think he'll win the MVP. I think he's going to put up just astronomical stats. No DeMarcus Cousins there. Obviously, Rajon Rondo's departed, but between Drew Holiday and their addition of Julius Randle, I really like the situation for Anthony Davis. I think, the media is starting to kind of pipe up on him since he signed with Clutch Sports. Is he going to go to LA? Is he leaving New Orleans? Is he going to go to the East? Whatever. But I think with all that noise, I think this is the year. Just some of the interviews I've seen with him, he looks locked in, kind of akin to what Kevin Garnett did that one year he won MVP in the mid-2000s, where he was just total locked in, every statistical category just dominant. I see that from Anthony Davis. I think the Pelicans are actually going to be, I would have them probably in my top 5 teams in the West. Just because of what Anthony Davis is going to be able to provide, health willing. And again, similar to Russell Westbrook, I like how the team is kind of what they've built around him. And whenever you have your number 2 guy that's, really willing to defer, in this case, Drew Holiday, really like what I see from New Orleans, as I have Anthony Davis as my MVP for this year. Finishing up in the West, I do have Luka Doncic winning Rookie of the Year of the Dallas Mavericks. No, Dallas is not going to make the playoffs. But just in terms of usage, if you've watched any of the preseason games, Luka Doncic is going to have the basketball. It's just so much. He's going to put up stats, and he's going to average over 15 points. He's going to average over 6 or 7 rebounds. He's going to average over 4 or 5 assists. So that alone, will be enough to vault him into Rookie of the Year. I do think Dallas is going to be improved in terms of winning maybe over 30 games. That's going to be a fun little backcourt between him and Dennis Smith Jr., how they mesh with, a good wing scorer in Harrison Barnes and obviously Dirk Nowitzki and their addition of DeAndre Jordan. They have some players and whatnot, but the West is just is too much this year right now. And it's too much to ask of I know he was EuroLeague MVP and the Euro LeBron and all that, but there is a learning curve when you come over to the NBA. But statistically, I think it's just going to be too overwhelming, and he will win Rookie of the Year. Now, in terms of competition, obviously you have DeAndre Ayton. I think Luka's main competition is actually going to be Marvin Bagley out of Sacramento Kings, because I think Marvin Bagley's probably going to lead. He could potentially average somewhere between 18, 20 points a game, maybe even 10, 11, 12 rebounds. So typically those would be good, shoe-in for Rookie of the Year. But I do think that their record is going to be so bad. I mean, they had a game the other day. I know it's preseason, but they had to restrict and cross out the score because, when they were posting on the Kings were posting on their social media. It's really happened. Go look it up. But I do think Marvin Bagley will be in the hunt. But I do think Luka Doncic will take home Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year, I'm also going to give that to Anthony Davis. So I think we're going to have potentially a Michael Jordan situation where he won MVP and Defensive Player of the Year in the same season. I think we could see that with Anthony Davis. I actually had him winning Defensive Player of the Year last year because I didn't think Rudy Gobert played enough games. But I think I really think Anthony Davis is going to be on a rampage and put up probably one of the best statistical seasons we've seen in modern NBA history. Now, just to conclude everything, going over to the Eastern Conference, very interesting. LeBron leaves. It's everybody. The door's open for everybody. If you're Boston, you got Kyrie coming back. Obviously, Gordon Hayward played last night, and they're just deeper than everybody else. Toronto, smartly, in my opinion, goes after Kawhi Leonard, try to go all in and try to win the East. And on paper, if I'm a Toronto fan, I feel like we have the best player in the Eastern Conference. I know people in Milwaukee will debate you on that. If you're Milwaukee, you feel like, hey, we have an opportunity to be a top seed in the Eastern Conference and, try to make some noise with hopefully Giannis making that next leap onto, possibly being an MVP himself. So across the board, I mean, we saw, Philadelphia feels like they have two of the best players in the conference. If you're a Washington or any of these other teams in the East, there's nobody in your way. The big bad wolf is gone to LA, so to speak. So I do think the Boston Celtics will come out of the Eastern Conference. I do think that they will defeat the Toronto Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals. I do not have Philadelphia advancing. I don't think they're coached well enough. No disrespect to Brett Brown, but I don't think they're coached well enough. I think they're making a mistake by starting Fultz right now, and I like Fultz long term, but I think he should be coming off the bench right now, and they should have as much shooting as possible with Simmons and Embiid. As explosive as Simmons looks, and Embiid actually looks like he's in a little bit better shape. They just haven't. Their basketball IQ is not there in comparison to a Boston. I do think Toronto, with the addition of Kawhi Leonard, Danny Green, coupled with Kyle Lowry, their roster looks pretty good. They had one of the deepest benches in the league last year. So, health willing, I do think that they're probably going to be the second best team in the Eastern Conference. But we'll have to see. Does like a Miami Heat, do they go out and make a trade for a disgruntled Jimmy Butler from Minnesota? There's a lot of things on the table. I think we will see a few blockbuster deals. There's no way Jimmy Butler, to me, is going to make it all the way through Minnesota. So if I'm one of these Eastern Conference teams, I would like to probably swing a player like that back. Because, again, it's time to make your run before – because, again, it's wide open. Boston on paper, and that's why I'm picking them, because they have the deepest team. Jason Tatum was looking like Kobe last night. Kyrie's not even healthy yet. Gordon's not even healthy yet. So whatever they get from those guys, in conjunction with a Jaylen Brown and how deep their bench is, Scary Terry, Marcus Smart, Marcus Morris. So all across the board, they're going to be, I think it's just going to be too much out of the Eastern Conference. Out of the West, I have Golden State defeating the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference Finals in a rematch. I think Golden State will probably, I think Houston will probably take care of LA in the semifinals, because it's going to be a lot for LeBron to lean on some of these younger guys that have never experienced high, playoff pressure. And I think that's something we probably have taken for granted in Cleveland. So I have Golden State defeating Houston, Boston defeating Toronto in the East, Boston, Golden State. I have Golden State defeating Boston in the NBA Finals for the third straight championship. And it's probably Kevin Durant's last season. I haven't brought him up yet for a good reason. I kind of want to end here. That's going to be the biggest storyline, I think, as the season progresses. Will he sign another contract? Will he sign another 1 year? Who knows? New York looming. I think KD doesn't know what he wants to do yet, to be honest. I think a guy like Coach Fizdale in New York, is that somebody he would be willing to get along with? Because a lot of people talk about the Knicks, and I think KD just mentally, he really does care a lot about what people in terms of the media and the fans think, and he's always trying to plot for legacy. I think this move for Golden State was more about resume and money and setting up his mogul moves well after the fact. I think now that all that's been established, the next thing box to check is kind of like what LeBron did when he went to Cleveland, is to go somewhere and save somebody, save a city that's hasn't won a long time. And for KD, if he goes, if any superstar goes to New York and wins a championship, you rewrite the whole narrative. So that's what I see potentially happening with Kevin Durant after the season. I think that New York storyline is very, very real, especially if Golden State, decides to, depending on how the Klay Thompson contract situation comes out. I know there's been a lot of articles about that this past week. A lot to dissect here. And he's obviously gone to Golden State and have done and given them exactly what they've wanted and then some. So overall, those are my predictions. Just to recap: Anthony Davis, MVP. Anthony Davis, Defensive Player of the Year. Luka Doncic, Rookie of the Year. I do have the Lakers finishing in the top 3 in the regular season in the Western Conference. I have the Golden State Warriors defeating the Houston Rockets in the Western Conference Finals. I have the Boston Celtics defeating the Toronto Raptors in the Eastern Conference Finals. And ultimately the Golden State Warriors winning their 3rd consecutive championship. Now 4 championships, potentially in 5 years, over the Boston Celtics. As they may even, the other angle is they run it back and they start their own little mega rivalry or series, whatever have you, because that's how loaded Boston is as well. So y'all let me know in the comments. I know I went through a lot and just wanted to have more of a little stream of consciousness conversation with, just NBA, and I'm going to try to come back at least weekly, just my thoughts, what's going on around the league, any big storylines hit. I know I covered a lot of stories on here during last season. I also have, obviously my own personal Spurs content as well. So a lot to dive into. Really excited about tonight. A lot of games going on. Excited to see my Spurs take on the Timberwolves. And y'all let me know who you're excited to see early in this season. Any new breakout teams or players that you would like to highlight as well. So as always, I appreciate y'all. I think we're almost at 2,000 subscribers and couldn't be more thankful. Appreciate y'all.